Greetings everybody, my name is Tommy the Game Master and welcome to my channel. Now, one of the things I did when it came to that Final Fantasy 15 review I just posted was promise a story analysis. The way I edited that video was a bit unique. What happened was I started editing a review for Final Fantasy 15 back in January, hoping to get it done before both Tales of Berseria and Kingdom Hearts 2.8 released on the same day. However, just as I was in the middle of editing, about halfway through the story section, I had to go to work. No problem, I'll just finish it after the work. And then when I got home, I had one hell of a cold that lasted for several weeks. And then I also got into Kingdom Hearts and Tales of Berseria, so I didn't really have time to focus on going back and redoing my Final Fantasy 15 review, but I did promise a story analysis, but I never got a chance to write one down. So here's just a quick rant in my overview of the story from what I remember. Basically, it's you play as a young prince named Noctus who, on his way to his wedding, finds out that his homeland has been captured by some evil emperor as part of some sort of plot to take over the world. He's now kind of exiled and is sneaking around his own country to gather weapons from fallen kings so he can use them to topple this empire and get his throne back. And then along the way, there's a whole bunch of prophecies saying he's the king of light, the one true king. And yes, if you're wondering if there's any biblical allegories in this story, there's tons of them, as later in the game, Noctis does start to rock the Carpenter from Galilee look, as the main villain also has an Antichrist vibe to him. And one of the final bosses you will fight will be the Aeon Ifrit, who does look at Lucifer from a lot of the classical drawings. So yeah, you have that in there. Now, my main thoughts on the characters are it's a bit of a mixed bag as with the plot, and I touched on it a bit in my review, and I'll touch on it here. One of the best things about this game, as well as one of the worst things about this game's story, is they decided to divide it up into animes and movies, and then kind of leave the story and the game from on its own and keeping it from being too bogged down and making sure that the focus are just on these four characters and the brotherhood they have. And I think that works for the most part. I do enjoy the characters. If you don't know the characters, you have Noctis, who is the emo brooding leader and has no personality, outside of being an emo brooding leader. You have Ignis, who is the brains of the group, cunning, tactical, a bit sarcastic. You have GLaDOS, who is the big hunking brute of the group, can kind of pick fights with the other people and he gets ticked off. And then you have Prompto, the younger brother of the group, who's hyperactive and a bit of a dimwit. And if that does sound familiar to you, it should. If you're going to rip off a character of 4, you might as well rip off the best and rip off the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's an excellent team of 4 to use for a character template. That said, these characters do have their own backstories and interesting lives. However, one of the problems come in since you don't get any of their backstories and how they know Noctis. There are tons of lines that if you don't watch, I think it's called Final Fantasy Brotherhood, the anime that's oftentimes packaged in with the Kingsglaive movie, you won't understand why Ignis gets angry at Prompto for wanting fast food and little things like that, which would help in the story. That said, the banter between these 4 is oftentimes funny, it's heartwarming, and you do get the idea that these 3 people who are tagging along with Noctis do it so because they consider him his brother and not out of either loyalty for their country or because they're getting a paycheck from him. They do it because they do consider him one of their best friends. And like I said, it's a really nice friendship that the group has among themselves, and I kind of like it. Now, what really stunk about the story, again, and it has to do with the fact that they broke it up into, again, a bunch of movies, a bunch of comics and stuff, is that some of the side characters that you're supposed to give a flying twit about, you don't really care. For example, you're supposed to know that King Regis was important in Noctis's life. And if you watch some of the very early trailers for this game, It's obvious that Noctus is supposed to be around for when the city is attacked, Regis is killed, and all this stuff happens. However, they took that out. They took his character out and made Final Fantasy Kingsglaive. So he's now out for the destruction of his hometown, and because of that, King Regis's death means very little. And yes, I have seen Kingsglaive. I know Noctis is important to him, but we never really see any father-son bonding, not even really in flashbacks or what their relationship is like before he leaves. So why should I care? And then that also happens later in the game when Freya, Noctis's lover, kind of gets Sephiroth by the main villain too. And unlike Aerith, which was kind of a sad scene to see when that happens to her, we don't really care this time because we never see Noctis or her together outside of flashbacks when they're kids. We don't really get to know this character, especially if you haven't seen Kingsglaive, which even if you have, I still didn't know her enough to really care. I feel sorry for the guy because you do get the idea that, yeah, he is anxious and waiting for the day that he gets to meet her again and see if they could fall in love, and he's completely denied that opportunity, but I didn't really shed any tears. It's like, oh, she just got killed. And that is a major weakness to this game's plot and story, unfortunately. Overall, I think story-wise, this is a good step in the right direction when you consider just how bogged down in narration the Final Fantasy XIII series was, just how convoluted it was, and just how unlikable the characters are. And while some of the changes to the game script means the game story does lack an emotional impact that it kind of needs to in some of these key scenes, I'll take it way over the Final Fantasy XIII's dialogue. I always knew what was going on. I always understood the references that were going on in some way or another, and the game doesn't try to put in a whole bunch of bullcrap to make itself seem bigger than it is. So it is a step in the right direction. Still not a great story in my opinion, but it's not a bad one either. Anyways, this is Tommy the Game Master thanking you for listening to this. I'm sorry I wasn't able to do as many of my thoughts as I had, 6 or 7 months ago, but life happens. I'll see you guys later.